Context is all about being interactive. So call us, email us, tweet, or Facebook us. How else are you going to join the conversation? We want to hear from you.
We're back with best-selling author Philip Yancey on why, the question that never goes away. And this is actually about surviving the worst life can give us. Perhaps the saddest story that Canadians grappled with in the last year. July 6, 2013, 47 deaths in a fireball of a train disaster in Lac-Mégantic, Quebec. I think that town and all of its many friends is just starting to work its way through that tragedy. What might they possibly hope for from God, given the future they're facing on grief?
There was a story that came out of the London Olympics. That tragedy that we had in the United States, similar to this one that you've referred to, is in Newtown, Connecticut, where the shooting took place. And in the London Olympics, there was a young man named Andy Murray. Andy Murray happened to be a student in the grammar school in Dunblane, Scotland, when a person killed 16 of the children there. And everybody else who won a gold medal in the Olympics did a big parade in downtown London. And Andy said, all my life, I wanted to change the reputation of Dunblane from a town of tragedy to a town of triumph. So I'm going to have my own private parade in Dunblane, Scotland. And he did. And that's what I heard from Newtown as well, that we need to somehow overcome the shroud of grief that has characterized our town. What I find in Newtown and this town here in Canada, where people were, as I understand it, just sitting on a patio listening to music.
Or sleeping in their beds.
Sleeping in their beds,
incinerated.
right. What's important is to have a community around you. We have the American television personality, you probably have him up here too, Fred Rogers, remember Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? And he said, when I was a little boy and something bad would happen, I would be scared. And my mother would say to me, Fred, when something bad happens, look for the helpers. Look for the helpers. And he said, that's always helped me when tragedy happens, when something bad happens. Instead of focusing on the bad things, I focus on the good people who respond. And I find that that can help, especially children coping with the shroud of grief that surrounds a town like that.
Well, you do mention Newtown, and we were like of the many thousands of reporters who covered it. We did as well. And Sheldon, you came back with just really tough stuff. You talked to young people there, you talked to families. You've got a question for Philip on this.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lorna. My question is, when you look at tragedy through the lens of something like Newtown, it was gripping, horrific. My question is, what do you think God is trying to teach us about his character, and what do you think he hopes we learn about ourselves in that process?
Those are two questions, and they're very good questions. Let's start with the first one. What is God trying to teach us? What I learned is that God is always on the side of the sufferer, the one who suffers. It's easy when tragedy happens to think, well, I did something wrong, God is punishing me. But if we had time, I could take you all the way through the Bible and say the opposite is true. All you have to do is follow Jesus around to see how Jesus responded to someone who was in pain. He never lectured, he never even tried to explain. He said, this is not what God wants. In fact, he taught us to pray that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we are the ones who were commissioned to do God's will on this earth. So what is God trying to teach us? He's not trying to get our attention. At the same time, when tragedy happens, it kind of increases our hearing so that we can think about what's most important in life.
I want to just take a pause there.
Okay.
And actually go to a studio audience hard times story. We talked a lot about you coming because you touch on so many universal things. And the chairman of our board, Dr. Franklin Piles, has been founding chair of this ministry. We've watched his family go through hard times.
Mr. Yancey, have you encountered people who found it difficult to move to a place of joy again, a place of fulfillment in their lives again because they felt guilty that if they did, somehow they would be betraying the people they lost. And what would you say to them?
Okay, and Franklin, if can just add a bit of context around your story. Philip, Franklin and Gay have lost a young their daughter, to a drunk driver. And then a few years later, their young missionary son was killed while on a Samaritan's Purse aid run in the West Bank. So they've lost 2 young adult children to death. The question's very appropriate.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend in the city where I live near Denver, Colorado, who's a grief pastor. That's his job description. He's in a very large church. It's so large that almost every week someone dies. He has to do a funeral. And certainly every week there's someone in the hospital with a terminal condition or near death. And he said one of the things that helped him most about dealing with people in grief and going through hard times is something he learned: scuba diving. He said, how to explain? And he said, well, in scuba diving, you can go very deep, but the deeper you go, the slower you have to come up. And he said a lot of Christians, when they're around someone who's going through a hard time, they want to get them to the surface as fast as possible. And you can't do that. You have to be where they are and go up slowly with them. And so for those of us who are around people who are going through hard times, we need that sensitivity to know, are they ready to come up, or do they need to stay here a while? And what I like is that in the Bible, every one of those stages is covered. If you go through the Psalms, there's the anger, there's the outrage, there's the confusion, there's also the joy at the top. And we all know God wants us to get to this place, but it's going to take different people, different amounts of time and care to get to that place. And that's part of the sensitivity that we need to learn as a community around those who are suffering. Are they ready to come up? We want them to come up, but we have to take the measure from them of at what time they can keep coming up from the grief, from the darkness to the light.
I want to close with a great quote that you end this book with. The death of death itself is a message that the world needs to hear once more. Where and how?
When I went to Newtown, I happened to be reading some of the books by the New Atheists. I won't name some names, but they're in the news all the time. And it occurred to me at a moment like this, or in your own tragedies in your country, or September 11 in my country, when a tragedy like that happens, those New Atheists are not asked to write the editorials in the New York Times. It's a pastor, it's a priest, it's a rabbi. And when I came there, I could offer them actual comfort and hope. It's okay to feel grief and rage against what's happening. It's okay. God himself is not satisfied with this world. If you're upset about things that are going on, believe me, God is more upset. But God promises to do something about it. God promises to eliminate death, to create a new world as God originally designed the world to be.
Okay, I'm going to talk more about that after this. But Philip, I don't often endorse a book as strongly as I'm going to ask people to get yours. 1-866-315-2080. 1-866-315-2080. There's just 150 pages. It's small, it's powerful, but I am a different and a better person because I've read this. Thank you. It's wonderful. I understand the mystery of my faith a little better. And anyway, I just want to say thank you very much for writing this book. Thank you for joining us.
Bless you, Lorna.
Coming up, well, I am glad this world is not as good as it gets. My take on this big question next.
We want you to be a part of our studio audience. If you're in the Toronto area, contact us. Be part of the conversation.
So why? Why, if there is a loving, watching, caring God, have we got heartbreaking evil and pain on this planet? Because this world is not as good as it gets. Sin took care of that. Earth is no longer the ideal place God has created for us. God hates suffering, pain, and death. He hates it. And like his love, his hatred of it is beyond our understanding. God's eternal and infinite love of people, though, is shown to us in Jesus Christ. So God's ideal world is still coming. We give it many words: heaven, the afterlife, resurrection. Jesus called it home. And Jesus told us God is preparing that place, home, for us. You know, it takes a lifetime to stay focused on that. It takes education of community, even community like this, to understand it. And it always takes saying yes to Jesus and Jesus's way of responding. You heard the stories today of James and Anna, 2 young adults killed in traumas no one should have to face. When I called the family, their father Franklin, who is our board chair here, he simply sighed. This is what the resurrection is for. Readjusting to the truth that a better world is coming. For more on this, drop us an email. We do try to answer all our inquiries, and we do have all the author resources we featured today, both on the website, and you can get the book, Why, at 1-866-315-2080, Philip Yancey's new book, Why. We'd love to send you a copy of that, and it goes free with any donation to the work here. For all of us, I'm Lorna Dueck. Thanks for watching. Join us next week as we explore life beyond the headlines.